Welcome to Web3 and Whiskey, a podcast about how the decentralized internet will change our lives. In each episode, we react to a future when users and communities have all of the power and when digital lives could be more vibrant than real life. And we drink whiskey while we're doing it. I'm your host, Gary Liu, and as always, I'm joined by Suresh Balaji, founder of the Web3 Marketing Association, and Malcolm Ong, a product leader and serial entrepreneur. Quick disclaimer, as always, we don't shill projects on this podcast, so consider any excitement that you hear from us to be personal opinion, and our opinions should not be taken as investment advice of any kind. Today's topic is going to bring out a lot of personal opinions. What we are actually going to be talking about is what happens when AI meets Web3. Before I get to that, let's see how our guests and co-hosts are doing today. Suresh, Malcolm, how are you guys doing?
Brilliant. This is kind of an extended winter here in Hong Kong, isn't it? We're all still wearing jumpers.
I take every opportunity to layer up in Hong Kong because the vast majority of the year we don't get to layer. So all of my sweaters and hoodies and jackets from back in my New York days, they sit in the closet in a suitcase in the bottom of the closet for much of the year. So yeah, I'll keep wearing out until it's too warm.
I thought of you as a mink man myself. I thought your minks would come up.
Mink man, I could not pull off mink if I tried. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm trying something new, a little bit more of an intimate mic setup, so I don't have to project as much because I don't have much of a voice for that. So Suresh and Malcolm, and to our listeners, I apologize for being so deep inside your ear canal right now.
And so Mikey.
So Mikey, yeah. What about our whiskeys, gentlemen? As always, we have to start with our whiskeys. Malcolm, what are you drinking tonight?
I brought back a favorite. It's the Kavalan Solist from Taiwan. This is the sherry cask version. So one thing that I didn't show last time. So we had this in another episode. So tune into that one to hear some of the details. But this time I wanted to show on video, for those of you on video, I really liked the packaging around this. So it's always a go-to for me. So that's what I have today.
Excellent. Suresh, have you brought back any old favorites?
No, this is one. It's an old favorite, but I've never brought it to the show. It's called Redbreast. It's Irish. And I figured out that firstly, it's also sherry cask. Is sherry cask our favorite here on the show? Are we?
I think it's probably by percentage the highest cask finish we've shared on the show.
Yeah. It's quite common.
Yeah, feels like it. So it's a sherry cask. It's single pot still Irish whiskey, 12 years, but quite rich, quite flavorsome, quite full of spices, fruits, very very wintry. You can smell Ireland in here. Not sure if that's it. I don't know if that's what I wanted to say, but you can smell some of this wintry feel is what I wanted to say. But it's brilliant.
I've been to Dublin. I love it. That's really the only place in Ireland. And I know that Dublin doesn't by any means represent all of Ireland, but Dublin smells nice to me.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
And look, I brought a tulip today.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I actually have no idea whether or not I brought this on the show before. But today I have a Gordon MacPhee Bunnahabhain. You guys know I like independent bottlings. This is another independent bottling. You guys also know that I like Bunnahabhain independent bottlings because there's just so many different flavors when you take a single cask of Bunnahabhain and finish it differently. And so this is yet another Bunnahabhain independent bottling. This is 14 years old. The previous ones that I do remember bringing are 9 years old, a little bit harsher, a little bit younger. It's not so much a rounded flavor. The flavors are a little bit more distinct from tongue all the way to finish. As a 14-year, it's a tiny bit more refined. So the tastes throughout are a little bit more well blended. But once again, an Isla that is non-peated. It's non-chill filtered and also no added coloring. So this color just comes directly from the cask. This is not a sherry cask. Okay. And I know that the previous ones I brought are sherry cask. This was matured in a American hogshead, right? So American pine cask. Small batch, one of 161 bottles that were actually released. And it is cask strength. So it was bottled at 57%. So this is going to have a little bit of a punch. The notes here, as written, ripe pear, red apple, aromas of soft vanilla, sweet pineapple, coconut flavors. I do get some of that. They also mentioned milk chocolate, some deep grape. Not so much that, but definitely the fruity notes. I think just somehow, whenever I drink whiskey, especially when it's a little bit chilly, I think about autumn. I think I use the term autumnal quite a bit. And this one smells and drinks like fruit picking to me. So definitely still has a lot of that Isla punch. And like I said, a little bit more refined than the other Bunnahabhain IBs I've shared before in the past.
Hey, I get the fruits from Isla, but where did coconut turn up in Isla? I didn't think Scotland was a very coconutty place.
Well, I mean, these are the tastes. It's not. That's obviously there's no coconut in this. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a little bit of the sweetness, flakiness of coconut. I have no idea. I mean, I don't write these notes.
When you're in Thailand drinking it, you taste it.
That is true. Yeah, when you're in Sheko here in Hong Kong drinking it, you taste it too.
That's it.
Hey, thanks for sharing your whiskeys. Cheers.
Cheers, chaps.
Cheers.
Good drums, gents. All right, gents. Today we're talking about what happens when AI meets Web3. Now, these are two big terms that encompass a lot of different things, and until quite recently have been separate worlds. AI has had moments in the sun, right? The last couple of years, there've been times when AI has been in the center of our technology zeitgeist, right? With the introduction of autonomous driving from Tesla, AI was all the rage. Prior to that, when AI was beating the world champions at Go and having a go at chess and beating world champions in chess, we talked a lot about what consumer AI can mean for the future. Of course, big data now is a part of our everyday lives, right? All of the algorithms that kind of rule and run our lives are driven by machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence in the back end. AI defines so much more of our world than I think any of us truly notice or want to admit to. So it's not a new thing, that's for sure. But AI is suddenly back in the conversation and back in a big way. ChatGPT, Midjourney, Lensa, right? All of these are consumer applications that people all around the world have been using and finding to be fascinating. You ask ChatGPT any question, you ask it to do simple tasks, and it can do it for you, like if there is a human on the other side. Not quite as with such high fidelity, but boy, has a natural language processing and understanding of human language or English language specifically and human desire. It just improves so much. Then you have Midjourney that is creating AI art, and people are marveling at how quote unquote easy and simple it is to create artistic output, right? By giving it prompts. And initially it was used as novelty, but now the big question on whether or not what is produced out of Midjourney is real art. In the same vein, you have Lensa, which is now it seems to be the default PFP of everyone in Silicon Valley, everyone who's in technology. Everyone has used the Lensa AI app to create versions of themselves, right? In different environments, with different art styles, and representing themselves online. Their digital identity is being represented by AI-generated pictures, right? So because of these three, as well as a few other consumer applications of artificial intelligence, suddenly it is center of our zeitgeist again. What about Web3? So Web3, as this podcast defines it, is a future decentralized internet. It is today still more philosophy than it is application. It's a world in which information distribution on the internet is no longer centralized through a couple of different companies or by a couple of different companies. It is an internet and a digital world in which you and I as individuals can own our own identity, own our own assets, and own our own data. This is all what we would call self-sovereign in this world. So having that kind of power as a community, as individuals in the internet is something that is not possible today. And that is a world that I think, I know, believe is additive to the world and will make the world a better place. So it's very interesting as AI has come back into the fore and as Web3 continues, even with the crypto downturn, to become more and more normal in our vernacular and in our imagination of the future, that these two things are finally crossing? There are many ways where AI and Web3 are intersecting. For that, I want to throw it to the gentleman who said, hey, let's talk about this, because he has been thinking a lot about this intersection. And that, of course, is Suresh Balaji. And Suresh, why don't you tell us where the intersection of AI and Web3 is most fascinating to you?
Firstly, Gary, that sort of preamble is so inspiring. The stuff that you said there, right, in terms of our belief in Web3 and, what we really think, Web3 can do to humanity. That is my starting point on AI as well, right? And the conversation earlier was always about machines versus humans. And I think it's the machines and humans. The question I've always asked is, can these machines make humans more human, right? So that's where I knitted out, many years ago when in the advent of mainstream AI. And very simply put, right, I want to sort of frame it for our listeners in terms of what I believe AI is and what Web3 is, and then let's talk about where this comes together, right? AI provides us with insights and analytics that helps us make better decisions, right? It could be business decisions, life decisions, whatever decisions. Whereas Web3 helps us to securely store and transmit data. So there is use of data to create decisions, and blockchain in some ways, security, transmission, ownership, custody of data. So there are these two things going on in parallel. And if you take that one level up, what AI is doing is AI is helping machines become more like humans, so that humans can fulfill their potential. Whereas Web3 is helping make the internet more like the real world through ownership, control, security, protection, etc. So in some ways, AI is trying to help us be better, and Web3 is trying to help our interactions through the internet, using the internet, and helping our lives get richer. So in some ways, these are parallel tracks, but I would imagine that these will have to come together in terms of if humans are getting better and our natural environment and the surrounding, which is now, broadly internet, is getting much better. I think they will play a role with each other. But I just want to, that's much more philosophical, right? But here are some practical stuff that's going on. The first one is, you're right, I think Midjourney blew my brain. I'm on their Discord. It's unbelievable, right? The Discord is on fire. The amount of AI the first application, I want to talk about 4 applications. The first one is definitely generative art NFTs, or generative art, generative digital collectibles, generative NFTs, whatever else, right? So that's the first one. The second one is, with the gaming is becoming so much more mainstream now, as we know. Gaming industry is way bigger than the entertainment industry. So the amount of work that needs to go into building a game, especially if you're using Unity, Unreal, etc., and you need loads of coders, loads of designers sitting there, building it out, building everything. And these games are getting richer and much more immersive. But a bulk of a work in creating these games are what gaming companies call NPCs, which are non-playing characters, right? It's where you are in Red Dead Redemption, you're riding a horse, and then there is this vast Midwestern desert, or you're in Uncharted, and there's this waterfall you're jumping over. These are non-playing characters. These things are the things that make the games hyper real. But somebody needs to build them. And in some ways, these game physics need to become much more real. And what some of these gaming developers are experimenting with is using AI to do the vast majority of this heavy lifting. Just to get render 3D deserts, right, or jungles, whatever else, trees, all the stuff that they need to create. You just get an AI to do it than somebody sitting and building them, right? So those are the sort of immersive, arty, side of things of Web3. But on the other side, the two interesting ones are, one is scaling coding, right? Scaling smart contract writing. The role of AI there can be to analyze code, verify code, bug detection, vulnerability detection, security checks, generate templates, all of those. I mean, if 98% of all software is all open source and it's all freely available on GitHub, so we're just putting things together. So maybe the AI can be used to sort of put things together, predict, simulate, how these contracts will behave in different scenarios, how when contracts, it's all if then, right? If something triggers, then how does the contract behave? So that's sort of on the coding side of things. On the permissionless system side of things, Web3 has become this mega exhaust of data, right? All the stuff that we thought would be in some stored secure server somewhere within a centralized organization is now available openly. I mean, Etherscan being one of the early ones who are looking at everything that's all transactions that are going on. And AI systems are usually hungry for data, and in some ways, Web3 is creating so much data that's available in the openly that AI systems can just snack on, right? And they can just hoover up and come up with models. And the whole idea of looking at patterns and how data scientists build ML models, right? Amazon has been playing with it, is what I hear. I mean, though Amazon SageMaker, which is one of their core services that helps build AI models and ML models, is not code that doesn't use blockchain natively, but they're adding now modules and they're releasing tools that integrate blockchain into the SageMaker workflow. So looks like, so there are four, right? NFTs, 3D rendering for games, smart contract coding, writing, and finally, just the availability of data to look at patterns out of the data coming out of Web3 for AI to play on. So those are my 4 intersection points. I'm super excited about it, and I would love to know what you think. Right?
Yeah, that was a lot. Let's take each of those 4 one by one. So I want to make sure that I've heard you right. The number 1 application, AI at Web3, generative art for NFTs. We've already seen that from the very beginning. Generative NFTs were to some degree there was an algorithm behind it. It was very, very simple generative algorithm, but there's still some form of algorithm. The second area is 3D rendering, and I think what you mean is the development and the design of an immersive new world, a virtual world, right? And that you're saying that AI can play a major role in scaling that world ultra fast. Number 3, also scaling, is the scaling of a lot of the infrastructure systems, especially the smart contracts, right? The rules that define our interaction with one another, interaction with assets in a decentralized internet. AI, you believe, has a place to play in it. And then finally, the analysis and the utilization of a mass amount of data that is generated by permissionless systems. AI's participation in that will actually make the entire ecosystem richer and more useful, right, for all of us. So those are the 4 areas: generative art, NFTs, 3D rendering, smart contract scale, and then really data analysis and data utilization scale. Okay, let's take it one by one. Let's start with generative art. This is already immediately a point of contention. And I will stipulate up front that, I'm obviously not a naysayer for artificial intelligence. I know how important it is in our lives today, and that its importance will only grow with time. However, I'm a little bit concerned about artificial intelligence and Web3 and its intersection. And the first principle that makes me, about Web3 that I believe in, that makes me concerned, is that I believe that Web3 empowers individuals. And the empowerment of individuals has everything to do with agency. Our ability now to decide what to do with our assets, what to do with our identity, what to do with our data, right? And not our ability to control that, but also, to know that those self-sovereign assets cannot be used in a way against our wishes or without us knowing. Artificial intelligence in any system takes away agency. It takes away, maybe it doesn't take away agency without choice. Maybe we choose for artificial intelligence to be in our lives, but I don't think that's true today, by the way. There's so much artificial intelligence around us. Even if there are ways for us to toggle it on and off, there's no way that all of us are going to know where all the switches are. But in the Web3 world, having artificial intelligence participate and make decisions effectively on our behalf takes away agency. And that already troubles me, because of one of the first principles I believe about Web3, which is agency. Okay, so I want to stipulate that up front, and you'll hear that through all of my points of view on each of these four things. Okay?
Can you elaborate on that, Gary? Like, what do you mean AI giving up giving up agency for users?
Yeah,
taking it away.
Well, the way that AI, and this is, it might be that my limited imagination of what the intersection of AI and Web3 can mean for the future, it leads me to that conclusion, and it's limited by the use cases of AI in Web2. The primary use cases of artificial intelligence in Web2 is to make decisions for human beings, make them faster, more efficiently, right? For us, more intelligently. Some may argue for us, whether it is something as grand as autonomous driving, or something as small as your music recommendation on Spotify, right? It takes away the need for us to do the hard work of deciding, right, what to do next. That's taking away agency. For us, if Spotify were to one day, as Daniel Ek has mentioned in the past, become just a play button, right, then we no longer have the choice, or people who use that system no longer have the choice of what music to listen to next. And they're trusting that an AI will choose correctly for the moment in the day, for the activity, for your preference, blah, blah, blah. And the assumption is that the vast majority of people in the world, and the assumption, by the way, I think is backed up by data, would prefer that than the hard work of having to create playlists and figure out what's next. Okay, so that's a choice today, right? We are okay with Spotify recommending music to us, because for most of us who are not music geeks like Malcolm, the AI is going to do a better job discovering music on our behalf than we would ourselves. Okay, but in Web3, a decentralized internet, where the decentralization is to give us back the power of choice, if AI were deployed at scale across the entire ecosystem, and we'll get to this specifically with smart contracts in a bit, which I'm very, very concerned about, right? I worry that what it does is it makes it too easy for us to no longer have choice. And slowly, we're going to give up that choice. And then by the time we realize Web3 is no longer going to be actually decentralized, right? Maybe we own our own assets, but all the decisions are centralized with artificial intelligence.
Ooh.
See, I don't think I see it that way, because I see AI as a tool, right? And as you mentioned, AI is nothing new. Perhaps the reason why companies like ChatGPT, which just sort of launched in November, a few months ago, and why AI is suddenly a hot topic today, is because of the availability of this type of technology for consumers, and the showcase of something like ChatGPT and DALL-E and all the other generative AI tools. It's now suddenly brought to light of some of the possibilities that it can do. Right, but it's still, to me, a tool, regardless if it's replacing maybe human steps or human actions that we previously did. So in your example of AI recommending something, I guess I don't quite get that connection in the Web3 world. If AI were to generate art NFTs, for example, how that takes away agency for the user and how that takes away choice. Because to me, it's more of the opposite, where, okay, it perhaps for communities and projects, it allows them to, create all this art. You can argue that in and of itself is problematic, but let's put that aside. And it creates all this art. And so therefore, then what are the other aspects that these projects may focus on? Is more of the utility behind it, maybe the community behind it. And certainly people know that this is generative art, or they should know. In fact, it should be disclosed that it's generative art. In fact, most of the NFTs today that you buy is already generative. It's not using AI, it's just using logic, but it is generated.
Okay, let's talk about generative art to begin with.
Yeah.
why is that not a problem, right? Today, we're already running into massive issues with generative art. Artists around the world, communities of artists, right, they're at revolt against generative art. We have seen that artists' creations are being freely used by these machine learning algorithms, right, to create generative art that now represents an artist's style without the artist ever getting compensated for it. And that's the exact opposite of the philosophy and the ethos of Web3. Web3 was supposed to allow artists to confidently put their works available up on the internet, available for people to view without them losing the rights to them and the ability to monetize them. Right? That's what NFTs are about for art. Why it's going to be such a paradigm shift for creators. And yet now AI has come in and said, you know what, we're going to scrape all of this stuff, and because AI doesn't care whether or not the art is an NFT or if it's just an infinite copy that has no provenance and has no authenticity, right? They just use it for machine learning. And they start pumping out art that people are buying, paying for, are freely using. And it's all for free because there's limited marginal cost to that art generation. And artists are losing out, right? And it's a big deal. And artists are getting banned because their art suddenly looks like generative art. And subreddits for artists think that, these guys are just faking it. And they're getting banned even though they have proof that they're the original creators of the source materials.
I saw that.
That's a problem.
I saw that as well. And I think, but here's the thing, right? What if the project set it up as CC0 in the first place? There seems to be this sort of CC0 movement going on, which I'm super fascinated about as well. And we've spoken in one of our previous episodes about the advantages of CC0. And if AI, eventually, I don't want to bring this to our favorite topic of regulation. Maybe AI will get regulated.
Yeah, let's go. Let's get regulators involved.
So, but eventually we will have to have some sort of, everyone will have to agree on a common ground. But if you get the if the project is CC0 and AI and, that's, let's say for some reason, Midjourney figures out that these designs and this look and feel that's been created is going to be quite popular, and you can either call it ripping off them or you can call it inspired by. And let's say that Midjourney creates a lot of inspired by the project. Let's say moonbirds, for example, and Midjourney creates loads of owls all over. But eventually, because of the strength of the moonbirds community, strength of its utility, strength of all of that, it's going to be positive PR for moonbirds. So I don't see, you've got to be confident in your original project that, a rip-off, a cover version is not going to affect your core.
The majority of artists who make a living out of their art are not going to put their stuff up as CC0, right? Because they get paid by people actually paying for their creation. They are creators. And that's a problem, right? Like, Moonbirds is made by a bunch of rich guys, right? The proof guys were already wealthy before, and that's why they were just like, you know what? Like, we will make more money off of the tokenization of these assets, and the more famous they get. And it's because they were rich and famous to begin with. A random artist who is selling their art on Fiverr right now, or putting themselves out there for like contract work, they're not going to be able to create a piece of art, make it free, and hope that a bunch of people see it. And because of that, the original NFT is going to cost more. That's just not the reality. They don't have the social network. They don't have the influence. They don't have the money to make that happen.
So isn't that then maybe similar to, any computer or robot that helps to create something that previously was created by a human, right? That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, and this is where I know I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to run into issues with my own argument because I do believe that AI has a massive role for the future and must, right, for us to continue to progress. There are a bunch of human tasks that ought to be automated. There are a bunch of decisions that we should not be making every single day because, frankly, machines could make it better than us that should continue to be made on our behalf, including driving, by the way. I absolutely believe in a future where autonomous driving should take away the steering wheel from human beings because we suck at driving. It's been proven.
It's much safer.
Yeah, it's much, much safer. So I absolutely believe in that. But the issue here is that we also have to realize that that kind of AI requires centralization, right? Their AI today and unlikely in several lifetimes will be able to create something out of nothing. AI needs to be trained. There has to be a source of training data, and that training data is by definition centralized, right? OpenAI is not actually open. Right? OpenAI is a foundation that is quote unquote a nonprofit, which funds a for-profit organization that has created this technology to be licensed out. And that's why it has a valuation of tens of billions of dollars and why Microsoft wants to own it, right? Because it's a for-profit business and they have centralized training sets of data to be able to create the artificial intelligence that makes ChatGPT so darn interesting, right? And so if AI is involved, there is a centralization of assets somewhere, whether it's data or training sets of other people's art, which means that it is centralized, no longer our agency, right? In some ways, what happens to it because AI decides. So yes, AI is important, but right now, at least the way that AI works today requires centralization of data and assets to develop the machine learning. So that's like, I mean, those are two philosophies that are counter to each other, Web3 and AI.
Perhaps it doesn't have to be that way, right? The whole promise of Web3 is to bring decentralization to things like data and access to data, right? More transparency to data. So if anything, I see Web3 helping AI in that we now have access to so much more data and, all of that is available for use. So it actually might be helpful for AI to be able to use this. And then therefore, the concept of giving power back to the users, right? Because again, I think the way I sort of see this evolution is it's not hey, AI will replace humans, but humans using AI will replace humans not without AI.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, this is Harari, right? This is that does require a ding. This is the premise of Homo Deus, right? Harari's book, the second most famous of his books, behind Sapiens. The idea is that we will eventually exist in a world where individuals that are effectively bionic rule, right? And the fear, of course, is that it becomes a caste system where the rich who can afford the bionics, right, to make ourselves stronger, faster, smarter, most importantly, will just be another race to those who cannot afford it. Right. This, by the way, is a premise of one of my favorite games of all time, Deus Ex, which became a pretty bad, I think it was a bad recreation on the silver screen. But the game itself was fantastic. Anyway, side comment. But that's the concept, right? But the question is, how is that possible in decentralization, right? Because I think data in Web3, people misunderstand and think that, because everything's on the blockchain and transparent, it means that all data is transparent. That's actually not the goal of Web3. Transactional data that allows for transparent accountability is on the blockchain. But decentralized storage and the anonymity of decentralized ID is supposed to mean that other kinds of data is actually not only anonymous, but private, right? And so individual data, whether it's PII or our preference data or our demographic data, things that are extremely important for the continued scale and usefulness of the internet and dApps, that stuff is going to be decentralized, but it's not going to be transparent on blockchain. If it were, no one would ever use it, right? As in, no one would ever use the systems that takes data that, yes, it's in the hands of Facebook and Google, but at the very least, the rest of the world can't see it, right? And move it into a transparent blockchain, No one wants their PII on chain, right? So decentralized data and self-sovereign data is not going to be transparent, right? And so in that world, how does AI operate without figuring out a way to centralize all that stuff again?
Okay, let's take a completely different angle. I just want to build on what Malcolm said, right? Which is, it's not the angle of, is AI going to mess with Web3's philosophy? What if in the other way, Web3 is going to help AI achieve its potential? Okay, let's look at it in so let me try and explain what I'm saying. So currently, if someone writes a piece of code or someone creates a machine learning algorithm that helps the machine to train the AI, right? So people who I've spoken with who are AI specialists talk about training the AI almost as if training a puppy, right? So you got to keep feeding it data, you keep testing scenarios, you keep showing stuff, and it then agrees to be what it needs to be, and then it does what it does. And people who train it, they spend time, effort, energy, everything else. Then they release it, and the next thing you know, someone's copied it. So what if we created a wrapper or a piece of code inside that trained ML data that gives the power to the creator of the machine learning algorithm so that anyone else who uses it from there on is going to pay creator fees?
Malcolm, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because in a similar vein, right? It's sort of like rather than having these monolith corporations like Google and Apple and Facebook own the majority of, let's say, these algorithms or these data AI models, if they were more accessible to consumers and therefore perhaps more accessible to, let's say, DAOs, right? So imagine DAOs now starting to create their own versions of AI and their own tools for that, and then putting that out in the open market. And the economics behind it is all crypto and token based. And so therefore the economics around all of this can certainly be integrated and woven into the model itself. So yeah, I certainly see that as a not only a possibility, but definitely, like you said, it's enabling AI even more. I definitely can see that.
Maybe I'm just too pedestrian in the way I'm thinking about it. You guys know I'm generally an optimist with stuff like this. And I really want AI. I mean, like I've mentioned multiple times, I know AI is going to be a huge part of our life and an increasingly large portion of our lives. It's just I haven't yet figured out how these two worlds actually intersect in a way that doesn't remove agency from us. Or actually, if we put it a different way, to frame it differently, how do we have self-sovereign data but still have enough available data to train AI models so that they're actually useful?
Good point. And I think self-sovereignty, let's break it up into parts, right? So there might be things on this planet that don't need self-sovereignty, where you're okay to trade that data for convenience. You're okay to trade that data for access. You're okay to trade that. I mean, people are happy to give their wallet ID so that they can get access to a community. So that's a choice that they make. So when you make a choice of that sort, maybe once you've made the choice around what data you want to provide, maybe that data can be then used to create value for you in the way that you determine what is value to you. So your case in point around music, maybe the case in point is also Google Maps, for example, right? I'm happy to give my data so that it's like I don't want to be stuck in traffic for 5 minutes, so I'll end up giving kilometers and kilometers of all the places I've been of data, and that's to an AI model, and everybody gives it, and it's sort of the community sort of helping each other, or ways the community sort of saying, okay, we will all provide data into this bucket so that it helps the community. It's true network effects. It's Metcalfe's law, and maybe that's where we have the core of decentralization, and you are who you are, and your data, your PII is what it is, and your custody of your assets. But when you release stuff, AI helps put it to best use and best outcomes.
That would be really interesting. A DAO treasury that holds DAO members' data, which the DAO members, by contributing the data to the pool, allow that data to be used to train machine learning. And then that whatever the AI that is developed by using the DAO's data, if that AI becomes monetized,
It's tokenized.
then the returns, the revenues, or the profits from the AI being monetized go back into the DAO. That could be very interesting.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about back to like generative art and generative content, and specifically when Suresh, you talk about 3D rendering. I also wonder, it's more of a question of like, okay, you have artists that maybe were used to creating this art themselves, but can AI give them the ability to more be a curator / orchestrator / producer of this, rather than spending time creating that one single asset? And I like the example of 3D rendering because that it brings to me the scenarios where, imagine you have a game and you have AI being able to automate or actually generate and create the non-primary scenarios of that game, right? So maybe there are bonus levels, or like you said, in a 3D immersive metaverse world, it's like all the NPCs and the characters of the NPCs. So it's all the other 80% stuff, rather than the main storyline, if you will. That I find fascinating. Yeah. And then if you're able to really weave that in with Web3 tech, I think that would be really fascinating.
Yeah. To be able to, at this point, I agree with absolutely. To be able to generate worlds at speeds that humans or teams of humans, armies of human designers could not, so that our ability to immerse in a metaverse, or the time to allow us to immerse in the metaverse gets decreased. I think that's wonderful. I think that would be very, very interesting. So that point, I think we all agree with. But there's one other of the 4 points that Suresh brought up that I want to contend with, and I really do wonder what the two of you guys think about this. Suresh said that AI could be used to scale smart contract writing. Okay. I might have a problem with this.
Go on.
Because I think about it this way. Smart contracts may very well in the future be the law. Literally the rules by which we interact with one another, we exchange with one another, right? They will be the limits on what we can and cannot do, or should not do in this new world, right? In Web3 and the metaverse, whatnot. Now, in today's like in real life, the rules of the world, the laws, are interpreted. They're interpreted by human beings. This is why we have judicial systems of judges with wigs, or sometimes with just robes, sitting and making final adjudication on what is right and what is wrong, and who is right and who is wrong. Whether or not we think the Supreme Court in the United States is still impartial, that's a whole nother question. But at the very least, we have a system in which we're supposed to trust the final top bench of our judicial system to decide what's right and wrong. Okay. Humans write our laws. Humans interpret our laws. Humans adjudicate those laws. And yes, there is an argument to be made. That's why law is imperfect, and that machines would be better at it. Fine, but what happens when AI decides those laws? AI writes the smart contracts that rule every aspect of our life. How can we be sure that AI is going to get it right? And the problem with smart contracts is once it's written and deployed, there's no changing that, right? And so again, maybe this is me being a pessimist, and I know that there are going to be AI enthusiasts who tell me, no, but humans write the code that generates the AI that goes and writes the smart contract. So there is still, there's still balance and rules there. But I just want to bring that up and ask what you guys think about the idea that AI could be writing the rules that govern so much of our lives in the future.
I think partly that's true in that, yes, it's humans that designed the AI, that designed the parameters of the inputs and the outputs, and therefore the smart contracts it's writing, it's not going to be completely, out of thin air, at least not anytime soon. And so if it's quite limited, right, it's quite limited to the existing logical structures, then I actually think it simply means that we would change our process, right? In the process of rather having developers write smart contracts, it's developers reviewing smart contracts, right? So I don't think it means that you're going to have autonomous systems completely writing smart contracts for everything and then having that be law, right, instantly. I think it's going to be, again, a tool to allow any organization, any company to do the smart contract work, if you will, the quote unquote busy work, but allow therefore our team, our human team, to focus on a different aspect of that.
Look, if we ever get to that Skynet type scenario, Gary,
that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Malcolm will build you a kill switch.
I trust Malcolm a lot. I don't trust Malcolm to program us a kill switch that would save our lives against freaking T-1000.
A big red button.
I don't know. I know I'm starting to sound like an old man in a tinfoil hat. And I'm not suggesting that it's going to be dystopia and a post-apocalyptic world if we let AI control these things. But I really do. I mean, I've said it over and over again. I'm wondering what that dovetail, what the intersection really looks like.
I think only time will tell, right? Only time will tell. I think we can see that in sort of mundane stuff. AI in Web 1, Web 2 worlds is doing really well, or at least it is starting to take some, it's doing the heavy lifting. Is it possible in the Web 3 world also? Can it do the same is the question. And I think we agree that it might. But the question is, can we have the parameters to hold it within and keep it honest, keep it on the straight and narrow, have guardrails in place? Maybe. But general purpose AI is not that smart, right? It's still dumb. Right. So, I mean, it's not, it can't think the way humans think. And I think that is just many, many years away. But hopefully not in our generation yet. Yeah. Hopefully, maybe not in our generation.
Yeah.
But the application is fascinating.
I mean, what's interesting is I think we talked about this in a previous episode before in terms of NFT projects using, for example, Superplastic, an NFT project that has digital characters. Right. And it effectively uses AI technology to create the personalities or whatever lore behind these digital characters. So the what if scenario here is, what if AI generated a digital character that acts as a influencer or a KOL online, and at the end of the day, passes the Turing test where you actually don't really know it's an AI behind it. But at the end of the day, it's like, does that matter? I don't know. Right. If the consumer enjoys and likes it, right? Does that matter? So it's sort of like generative art, generative music, generative books. So if an AI writes a piece of song that you actually enjoy and it becomes number one, does it matter that it was created by an AI? I don't know.
Or becomes so famous that everyone wants to vote for it and becomes the president of the United States?
I think we need to bring back that episode. Donald Trump is the definition of ANI, artificial non-intelligence.
Oh
no! We need to bring back that discussion topic because I don't think we ever released it. I think it was one of the test episodes where we talked about virtual influencers in a future metaverse. Is it okay? Would we allow a virtual pseudonymous, anonymous, potentially AI character to be CEO of a company we work for? Would we allow them to be a world leader, state leader of some kind? I think we have to bring back that discussion now. Gentlemen, we can go on forever. This has been such an interesting conversation. We, as most podcasts, have not ended on a conclusion of any kind, just more questions than we started off with. But it was a lot of fun to hear your points of view. Suresh, I appreciate you organizing your thoughts into those 4 different areas about which you're excited, I should say. I think at the end of the day, the intersection of AI and Web3 is theoretical right now. We're talking about it today, I think, because both of these two topics are so front of mind in technology for so many people. So naturally, we're saying, okay, if these two are part of our future, how do they come together? And the applications are still very limited where AI and Web3 really intersect. We're going to see more and more of it. And a lot of these problems, some of which, by the way, are ethics problems, our technology ethics problems are going to come to the fore in the coming years of development for both. So I can't wait to return back to this conversation where there are more use cases for us to discuss and debate. So thank you for joining me on this. This has been Web3 and Whiskey. Please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite audio channel and hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching it there. We hope that you've enjoyed it. Join us next week for more Web3 debates and more whiskey. I'm Gary Liu. Thank you for listening. See you next time.